Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being the show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lethal Weapon as well as the latest episode of Bull. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. For example, if you don't want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Lethal Weapon, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Bull. But the first thing we're going to talk about is this week's episode of Lethal Weapon. A very good episode with a lot of a thing the show does well. Like it does that, like obviously it does the action and fun side, but it really brings the drama when it comes to like character development and stuff like that. I mean, obviously just breaking everything down. Obviously the episode dealt with a kind of pop star named Shay. Basically her bodyguard, who she was kind of getting on with at the beginning, ends up getting killed. Which I love how that opening is. That kid, the dude in the like pool is just like smoking weed or whatever, while also listening to her music. He sees her and looks at his phone where the music video is playing. He's like, man, and then looks at his weed. But also from that, essentially the entire case dealt with the fact is that, you know, someone tried to kill her and everything, and it turned, I mean, with the series of events, turns out that one of the people, the person behind it is a dude from her past, Bobby, who was like her first boyfriend around the time she got, like, she kind of had a first hit and everything. Essentially, there was an accident, kind of a vehicular manslaughter situation. It was actually her behind the wheel, but Bobby went to jail for it. Like, he took the blame for it. She's supposed to take care of him, but for 5 years, she never really gave him any response. To be fair, that was on Phil's part, but still, like, I don't know whether it was 100% Shay's idea, was it Phil's idea, but that's why he always tried to keep distance between them. Like, even at, like, you know, maybe this could have all been avoided. Because basically it was just him being jilted, because the fact is, you let me rot in prison for 5 years. I thought I was going to be your everything, but it's like, no, we were together, we were a team, and it's like, you betrayed me like that. You're supposed to take care of me, so there's that. Sadly, that whole situation, I feel, because there's a part of me that was hoping Shay would kind of get to walk away from that situation okay, but, you know, she confessed and everything on a live stream about what she did that was actually her, so she gets arrested, that basically everything she has is basically falling apart, which to her, she's like, she's fine with, because I guess in her mind, she's like, I don't deserve it after everything that happened, like, all these years being quiet about that situation, like, you know, this is what I deserve, so I was hoping on some level that Riggs would be like, well, I'll check in with you from time to time, because like he kind of got a connection to her in the regard of like, because he ended up seeing bruises on her, and she accepted it because maybe on some level she just thought like, okay, it's what I deserve. Me, like, you know, it's like a combination of like, this is the price of fame, because it's like she can't avoid Phil, because Phil's like the whole reason why she has the career that she has, and maybe on some level maybe she thinks she deserves it because of the whole Bobby situation. I mean, I feel like it's more the first thing, but there could be like the latter that could be like part of the equation, because she's even like bruises healed, you know, and just kind of walks away from it. But it pissed Riggs off to the point Riggs actually punched him in the face, which it never really gets to that point that you actually find out why that is. I can, like, you know, because Riggs isn't, you know, big on talking about his feelings, but I can only assume the way he brought up the conversation to Palmer too, it's like, yeah, it's a guy, you know, guys, they get rough with girls that don't do what they want them to do and stuff like that. And it's like, I think he's talking from personal experience in the sense of like, maybe that's something that he saw with his own mom and dad. Because once again, I think I brought this up before, like, we don't know much about Riggs' past at all. When it came to parents, the only parents we ever got really introduced to were Miranda's. We've never seen Riggs' side of the family. So that's my only assumption in that regard. And maybe that's something we'll see kind of get built upon later on. But the fact of the matter is, he was so pissed, and there were multiple times Roger had to pull him back. Yo, Riggs, calm down. And even to the point, Phil was like, okay, my guards will show you a way out. And Roger's like, don't push it, you know, because you're starting to piss me off too. Because the fact of the matter is, like, Phil is a scummy scumbag anyway. Because the fact of the matter is, Riggs is like, okay, did you hit her? Did you give her those bruises? And he's like, she didn't tell you. He's like, nah, she didn't tell you. She knows better. It's like, like, I have to say, you piece of shit, you garbage human being. The fact is, he said that. It was like, you deserve to get punched in the face. And that whole situation turns into something interesting too, because the deputy chief, she's kind of like, okay, I want to know, is this whole thing an act? Like, I guess she thinks in his mind, like, oh, he's trying to act all cool and crazy super cop, like it's some kind of act. And she's like, find a new act. But then, like, seeing things later on with the whole car situation, hearing him talk and everything, she's like, oh wow, this is not an act. She's like, he is severely damaged in that regard. Like, you know, because everyone knows Riggs by reputation, but it's like some people, you know, she's probably on the side of thinking like, oh, it's just reputation that he's acting like that. So, I mean, ultimately, sadly, that plays a role into the whole, like, I mean, that right there was kind of a moment of just being like, asking Phil, it's like, oh yeah, he's like, come on, we're gonna die. It's like, well, it does seem like it'd be that type of situation. The car's literally about to fall off the edge and everything. He's making Phil like admit that he hurt Shay, and then he finally pulls him out. Literally seconds later, the car goes over the edge, and you see like even Roger's kind of like whoa, and then you have like Riggs just kind of like oh well, and just walks away like it's nothing, because no matter how normal he is, no matter how he's quote unquote fixed, like there's still that part of him that if he has to die, if there's a situation to die, he's not scared to die, because there's part of him, he just can't bring himself to do it, but there is sadly a part of him that wants to die, and it's just like, that's so heartbreaking, especially with the way things kind of went down in this episode. You have Palmer wanting him to talk a little bit more, because they had that whole beautiful thing at the beginning where you had Riggs and Roger and Trish and Palmer all kind of having brunch together and just having these conversations, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe you'll be around a lot more. It's like, oh no, like, whoa, did you just ask me to move it? It's like, yeah, it sounded like he asked you to move it. It's like, no, I didn't do that. And it's like, no, you read, I didn't. Shut up. You know, it's cute. And then there was a conversation between her and Trish. There was like, Trish was like, you know, because Palmer and herself thought like, hey, like she had to be over the whole relationship things after like the last, like her previous marriage fell apart. So in her mind, it's like, I'm not really for that. It's like, that's why things are good between me and Riggs. We get to have fun. We don't really dive too much. We keep our own baggage to ourselves and stuff like that. It's not like it's a relationship, but not really a relationship. We haven't really defined it and stuff like that. We're just having fun essentially. But then Trish was like, if you are thinking about, you know, wanting something, that if you do want more, it's like you should consider Riggs, because I think he'll surprise you, because she references like, oh, Riggs actually washed his hair for the first time he's ever been over here, and it's like, well, that's just showing you because there is change, like being around Palmer does change him. But sadly, it's like the fact is Riggs makes excuses, doesn't want to talk. The fact of the matter is, like, he faked a shower just to get away from that conversation with her about wanting to, like, you know, because for him it's like, no, I already told you about it, so just let it go, which I can understand. I'm not big on really talking about my feelings, but it's a situation where it's just like, ultimately Palmer was like, she never really realized it until like talking to Riggs that made her realize like she kind of wants that guy that's just like, oh, give you flowers and kind of like, you know, talk about his feelings, like, you know, I guess in a messed up way, a more normal-ish guy. But she's like, because the fact of the matter is, I don't want to make it so that you turn into someone else that you're not, Riggs. I want you to stay you. And so she's like leaving, and she probably won't be coming back. Whether it's ever or for a very long time. Like next time we meet her, maybe she's already moved on. But it's like Riggs is like, yeah, okay, you take care of yourself, Palmer. And it's like you look, it pans out, he has flowers. It's like, dude, that is so heartbreaking, because him and Palmer are so good together. Like I said, like that's where I ultimately think it comes down to, like ultimately going back to that conversation about what happened. I think it was a family issue. The reason why he was so passionate about it when it came to Shay and everything. But Riggs just can't bring himself to talk about his feelings. I mean, it's hard to say like whether Riggs was always like that. It seems like specifically it's after Miranda's death that he really just fell apart. He broke inside, you know? And it's heartbreaking to see that this relationship that because I was like, oh man, last episode I was like, oh man, Palmer and Riggs, yay, you're together. And it's just like right now it's like it's gone again. And it's like, oh, because it's like the first season was like, yeah, they like each other. And now, you know, obviously things with like about Miranda's case came up, so it's like, oh, that kind of stopped for a little bit. But then they met up again this season, yeah. Oh, so whether it's 100% over, we don't know. We will just have to wait and see, like in that regard, like beyond that. But that was just very heartbreaking to me that it just came down to that, because I just they're so cute together. And also because it's like you want, you know, because it's like you're cheering for Riggs. You want Riggs to be happy, like, you know. It's like he puts on a smile, like, you know, he's still trying to be normal in front of everybody. So he's putting on that big smile and everything, but it's like he's still hurting so much on the inside. So it's just, oh no, it's sad. Like I said, because also going back to that cute moment of just like, oh yeah, Riggs and Roger sitting there with their SOs having brunch. It's just, oh no, it was a cute moment. Other things I love walking away from this episode, because I don't want to end this episode on a downer, is the whole situation with his daughter in this episode. Like basically like oh my god, like stop acting like you know, like you're hip and cool, dad, you don't know anything. And also like when the case was done, it's like, yeah, my friends have officially like, oh yeah, you blew up all over the internet, dad. Yeah, he's like, yeah, because I'm so cool and awesome, right? It's like, nah, about the fact is because of the whole situation, Shay ended up getting arrested, so there's no more music from her anymore, so everyone blames you. So it's like all the kids, all these people about his daughter's age are like, screw you, man. You ruined everything. Everything's ruined because of you. Which Roger's like, I saved your life. But obviously another big thing was the whole him and Trish this episode. Oh, so good. That the fact is, it's like, okay, we got to get these tapes from this restaurant. Don't worry, I got this handled. Roger goes there, interrupts her at work and everything, and she's like, Roger, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm trying to get you. She's like, oh, do you have a subpoena? Oh, you thought you were just gonna come up here interrupt me during work? And the fact of the matter is, make me not only like break the law, bend the law for you in front of like my associates and stuff like that, just in front of my clients and associates and stuff like that. It's like, really, Roger, really? And it's just kind of, that moment where you have Roger, he knows he's in the wrong, and he's just kind of like, almost, And I love the fact is, it was Bowman who ended up getting them because like some hostess was like, oh my god, talking to you, like his eyes are amazing and stuff like that. But then later on, when the tape's playing, and then like Trish shows up and he's covering it up and everything, just standing in front of her, like, yeah, hey, man. She's like, I felt so bad about what happened, and look, I got the security tapes for it. He's like, what? That's great. She's like, what's that playing? What? That's a screensaver. And like, what? It's like, what? This that same thing that I told you about that you needed a subpoena for. It was just so good. I mean, to be fair, I mean, still from a legal standpoint, it doesn't stick, but it wasn't like Roger got it himself. It was actually Bowman, but he illegally acquired the evidence. So it was just kind of interesting to me. And the other introduction is Bowman. It's the fact is that, I mean, this guy, his introduction makes me go, I guess Cruz isn't going to be around this season. I guess like whatever joint operation thing was going on there ended. So, with that whole situation, I guess like storyline wise, that's what's going on, which I felt like there was a lot more to Cruz's story that I would have kind of liked to know about, but I kind of referenced that in the season premiere. But nevertheless, I'm very interested to see Bowman. He seems like a very kind of like hey, I'm here to learn from the greats. You guys are amazing, bringing suit to a crime scene, just doing his own thing, just kind of being like a friendly, like, hey, I just want to help out type of guy. He's kind of the face of the LAPD because like Roger was like, I feel like I know you. I was like, what is that referencing? Did not expect it to be like, oh, you're the poster boy of the LAPD, which ultimately like Roger ended up, well, basically it was a compromise where Bailey basically put his head on like, like that, so that's kind of interesting. Like I said, overall great episode, but it still like left me a little sour, just that ending and everything. I'm like, I don't know, I guess because I'm like a romantic and stuff like that, especially when it comes to TV shows, like when it's like, oh, get together, yeah, you're together. Oh, things kind of fell apart. And it's like I said, we don't know whether everything between him and Palmer is done for sure. Like I said, there might, storytelling wise, it might be like, hey, we never see like Palmer again, or maybe when we do see her again, she might be with someone else, or maybe there'll be a chance to rekindle things. Maybe Riggs will be a different person then, that he'll open up more to her. It's just one of those situations, like it's almost like too little too late. He had multiple chances and opportunities, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Because there's that whole thing between him and Roger being like, oh, Roger's constantly checking it, and then like Riggs is like, he's like, oh, you should do the same thing. It's like, why? Because Palmer knows exactly where I am. It's like, oh no, just to check it. But it's like, Trish will know that you're not home, Roger. So why are you constantly checking in to be like, oh yeah, still doing this? Like, the fact is that you're not home means that you're still, and like Riggs just couldn't understand it. Also completely skipped over the fact is that whole situation with Ray, kind of accidentally getting kicked out the window by Shay because he ended up falling out the window butt naked onto a wedding cake below, which is kind of interesting when you break it down, because it's like you were cheating too, like with your bodyguard. So it's like, is that really right for you? Well, I guess it's kind of like she knew he was already cheating, so she was retroactively. Nope, I'm using the word retroactively incorrectly. She basically did it afterwards to spite him because she knew he was doing it, and now she had proof because. I don't know. That was just interesting. I don't know why idiotically in my brain I was like, oh, he's going to fall into a pool or something. I was like, oh, right, there's no pool down there. So what is, oh, a cake. That's interesting. And that's kind of sad because that wedding cake is completely ruined because that dude's junk is officially, like, not just his junk, his entire body is in that cake, and it's just like, that's gross. That sucks. That cake is forever ruined. I'm so sorry for ruining this special moment for just all those people. So, like, who knows? Maybe going forward, we'll see a situation where Riggs will end up finding a possible new love interest. I doubt it'd be something immediately, because Riggs doesn't really click with people immediately. Because he usually, like, even when people are flirty with him in season 1, he was just kind of not noticing it at all, and Roger would, and I think it kind of bothered Roger a little bit that it happened. But And legitimately in the back of my mind, I've always kind of thought him and Cahill, but it's like, nah, Cahill would never let that happen because it like cross like professional boundaries, which, I mean, something could mess up and happen, but I think like, Cahill's too much of a professional to let that happen. I don't know if Riggs really looks at her like that. Like, I think Riggs just looks at her as just, a friend, someone trying to help and everything, so. Like I said, this is just my thoughts and everything, so we would just kind of have to wait to see what goes down the rest of the season, but also like what goes on in the next episode, what it has in store for us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Bull. Another great episode, Bull. Much like Lethal Weapon, kind of depressing episode. I mean, truth be told, it's not like every episode of like Bull is like sunshine and rainbows, but it's a very somber episode all across the board. Obviously, this episode dealing with the fact is that it was like a hazing night, bunch of college kids, and basically one of them, the victim in this case, Sam, ended up drowning in a very brutal way too, because like he ended up drowning because he ended up throwing up he ended up choking on his own vomit, and that's how he ultimately died. But basically it's about these kids, like these 15 kids all like covering for each other. No one's saying anything. Everyone's saying they're all sticking to these lies and everything. Like, cause it all started because Bull was working on one case, and the judge in that case was asking him to look into this case, asking him to help out an ADA. That ADA ended up turning out to be Richmond, her son. So, which is kind of interesting because Richmond seems very arrogant. Like, the fact is he doesn't really want to listen to Bull. He's just like, I don't know why. The only reason why you're here is because my mom sent you. I don't really need you, blah, 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 blah. Which I think ultimately at the end of the day, Richmond kind of was like, okay, I like you, dude. I'm trying to think, like, now I'm sitting here thinking, like, how many lawyers do you often see? I think the only, like, prosecutors or defendants or whatever, the only one you ever see periodically has been Liberty and Diane. I don't know, like they're the only ones. But nevertheless, I'm just curious if we'll get to see him in the future or not. It seems like as the episode progresses, he still kind of acts a little asshole-ish because he's kind of like, Bull's like, okay, yo, that's what you need to do. He's like, I know what I need to do. It's like, okay, then I guess we're done here. So, but it's just like, because Bull's like pissed at him because it's like, you saw what that mother needed. You, like, the fact is you didn't push. The fact of the matter is you see what this mother needed to hear, but you just couldn't bring yourself to do it. It's like, even if you had to tell a lie, if it meant like saying a lie, like even something like, okay, we're going to do the best that we can, like, and obviously in those situations you don't want to make promises, but the fact of the matter is Richmond wasn't doing anything to help the situation. This mother's here in pain. She needs answers. You couldn't even give her that. So it's just like Bull's just kind of snapping at him for like the way he handled that. Plus the fact is he looks at Bull and everyone like, oh, everyone's dumber than him. It's like he's smarter than everyone else. Basically Bull's like, no matter how good you did on the test and stuff like that, how good your handwriting is, blah, 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 blah. You're like, don't come in here thinking you're hot shit, essentially. So, but basically, ultimately, the whole premise of this episode is kind of like that almost pure pressure mentality. And it's kind of a interesting thing he brings up in the episode called the threshold number. Essentially, it's like the number of people it takes for something to make a decision before you make it yourself. So like, say like there's 5 people. The example he kind of uses is throwing a brick through a wall, like into a glass window or something. If like 5 people do it, like that threshold number is like how many people doing it will happen before everyone else there decides to join in as well. So that's kind of what this whole situation was. Like one person made a decision like, hey, don't worry about this whole situation, and everyone else just went along with it essentially. So obviously it falls down to one person at in the episode. I think it's the dude's name is Logan. He was ultimately the one responsible. He supplied the drinks, the alcohol. He pushed them to go into the water and stuff like that. I mean, he literally pushed Sam. Yeah, they were having fun and everything, but they were drinking heavily. They were acting irresponsible. And then he says, oh, what if Sam made it back to the made it back? It's like, he probably didn't, but it's like he even said it later on. He's like, he regrets he ever said that word. Because everyone was just kind of like, okay, everyone knew he probably wasn't, but everyone was just hoping on everything that he was, because they rather think of it like that than rather like, oh, maybe he's drowning, maybe he's dead somewhere, which he was. That everyone went to their rooms, went to sleep, all just praying and hoping that when they wake up, he'd be there tomorrow, but he wasn't. So it's a situation of like kids being kids, sure, but there's still the aspect of personal responsibility. Like the fact of the matter is what the kid Logan did was messed up, because it was his. Yes, it was a group entirely. It was a group decision, but he was the one that was at the forefront and everything. And ultimately he ended up like, admitting his fault, but ultimately that came about just because Bull and them kind of lied and manipulated him in the whole situation. But the fact is, none of them were breaking. No matter what Bull did, none of them would break. Even like his roommate wouldn't say anything, even with the question, because like there was so much alcohol in his system. Like they're saying like, oh yeah, he went back to the place and like slept it off and then came back. It's like in that type of amount of alcohol would be borderlining dead with just how much alcohol was in his system. So it's like there's kind of like you could call BS on that, and it's just sad that I mean ultimately it's sad the story all around, especially because you had the mom being like all she wanted was answers, and like when Bull puts her on the stand, which the judge kind of lets happen, which interestingly enough I had to rewind it because at first I was like, wait, was that who I think it was? I rewinded it. The actress playing the judge is the same actress who played Kate, aka Mr. Kaplan, on the Blacklist. I was like, oh yeah, that's so cool. But basically, like the mom was on the stand and she talked about what was going through her mind. It's like, no, there's no way that could be my Sam. Interesting enough, the actress who played her like she's been in so much stuff. I think the most recent thing I ever saw her in was was her character named Cutter in the other CBS show American Gothic. Like I think that was like the most recent thing I've seen her in. Maybe to my knowledge it is, but nevertheless, it's like she just wanted to know the truth, you know? It's like, I don't know, it's depressing as shit. Like, that's all I can really say about it. It's sad that the turn of events played out the way they did. Ultimately, justice was served. Like, obviously, like, there was a little leniency on Logan for everything because of Bull, because of the judge realized, you know, everything. And then the boys ended up the others didn't get away scot-free either. They had to pay they had to do like 500 hours of community service. Because even if Logan was in the forefront, they all played a part in this. At any point in time, any of them could be like, nah, we could call for help, but none of them did. And it's detestable that none of them did in that particular moment. So once again, kids will be kids, but there's still the aspect of personal responsibility in that regard. It's like you help push him into that, you push Sam into that position, and everything that happened to him afterwards falls on your shoulder. So because it seems like, because even Logan was like, yeah, they were not going to tell their parents, or the promise they made to each other was not to tell their parents or their lawyers anything either, just because it's like they're kids and they were drunk and stupid and reckless and didn't want to get in trouble, because that's what you do when you're young and stupid. You lie like there is no tomorrow just because you want to do whatever you can, because none of them could look her in the eye when she was telling, like when she was on the stand, or some just kind of looking down because they were too ashamed of themselves, because ultimately they were all afraid, they were all ashamed, but they just couldn't break ranks because it would ultimately, they made that promise. And it's, I don't know, it's just, I guess arguably there's an element of the whole thing of peer pressure, but still, I don't know, like that really applies to this particular situation. So, but I don't know. It's actually kind of interesting that when going back to it, I brought up earlier, is the whole lying thing. I'm surprised that Richmond was kind of going for it, because even Bull was like, yeah, we got to get Richmond on this. Like, let's see whether he'll actually go for it or whether he'll kind of end up ruining or scam and everything, which it seems like Richmond played into it too, which ultimately led to everything. Because, I mean, they had no hard evidence, they had no witnesses, so this is just kind of a final ditch effort. Like, he knew, like, he needed to do one final push, because they fought, like, you know, when Sam's mom was giving her testimony, like everyone turned to Logan because everyone knew it was him, and he was the one that was too like embarrassed and ashamed to like look her in the face, you know, while she was talking. So, but that was about the case itself. There was an element to this particular case that was kind of interesting too, and that was kind of the absence of Marissa, because obviously, like, Marissa ends up showing up late at one point because the Bull's like, Marissa. It's like, Marissa's not here. It's like, what do you mean Marissa's not here? She's not here. She's always here. Like, the fact of the matter, she's always on time. The fact that she's late, it's weird. Bull's like, okay, what's up with this? And obviously, you see, it seems like Benny and Cable kind of know something, but they're not telling him anything. It's like, in the 6 years Bull's been working with her, she's never been like, well, not in the 6 years, because they've actually known each other even longer, but it's like, yeah, in the 6 years, she's never even gotten sick. He's like, what's going on here? He's asking her questions. She's like, oh, she just had, like, makes it almost seem like it was like, oh yeah, things happened, things unfolded, and ended up having a fun night, essentially. Kind of alluding to, like, she got some, essentially. You know, probably that's not as romantic as what probably went down. There's a little romance in there, but there was some bound chicka bound bound. I guess that's the best way I put it. I'm an idiot. But like Bull at one point in the episode is like you see Marissa just like talking on the phone, and he's just like, you know what, forget it. He's like, I don't need her. So it's kind of interesting. It's an element that it popped in the episode a little bit, but it's still like elements of like Marissa not playing as big a role in the episodes I feel like she normally would when it comes to like tack support, you know. So it was just kind of interesting, and I feel like it kind of threw Bull a little off his game because he wasn't playing at full strength because he has Marissa to kind of back him up and everything. I mean, besides it also dealt with the nature of the case and everything, and everyone keeping hush hush about everything. But it added an interesting element because like Bull's like, oh, why don't you bring him around, let me get introduced to him, and she's like, oh no, not the wedding bells yet. He's like, well, if you ever need to talk or anything, she's like, no, I'm good. She's like, for the first time, she's like, I'm very happy. And he's like, well, I'm happy you're happy. So he goes back at the end of the episode to talk to her and everything, but she's not there. So then immediately my brain goes, okay, I think this is setting up almost like, because you see that little look between Benny and Cable. It's obviously they had the idea, but it seems like, you know, Marissa's dating someone. Like obviously before she was dating an ex, but she didn't want to admit it. That was something that came up during season 1. Which, you know, Bull was like, I'm not going to judge you for that. So it seems like, I don't know whether it's that same situation or whether this is like a completely different situation, someone new in her life. And I guess a lot of people are not saying anything. I mean, for one, it's Marissa's life. Like, you know, Bull isn't entitled to know every little single detail about her personal life. I think that's kind of what that might be alluding to. And there's also the aspect of like, you know, it's just like, you know, boundaries and stuff like that, I guess. But I think it's like because Bull and her have been such a tight team, the fact is that it's just like it throws the whole like thing off kilter a little bit. And I think it's also kind of being like she's the person Bull's probably closest to, and now it's like, oh, Marissa, oh, you're not here, I'm just kind of all on my own, like, you know, because she's the person Bull probably relies on the most amongst anyone intact. Probably just in general, that's the person he relies on most is Marissa. I mean, like I said, I would still love to learn more about how this whole tack thing started. Like, hopefully we get an episode like that this season. But learning more about him and Marissa, like how this all started. So maybe that might be something going forward as we develop like their relationship kind of like pulling apart, because it's like, I guess in Bull's eyes, it might be like, oh, he's being replaced a little bit. And maybe some people like, you know, Benny and Cable kind of look at it like that. Like, oh, maybe they might look at it as like, oh, this is like oh, you're getting a little jealous that you're like, that you might be losing Marissa. So as we've already seen throughout the season, like he doesn't want to lose people. Like this team is cultivated the way it is, and he did what he could to make sure that Chuck could, you know, go to school but also still work there. So maybe the same thing is like the fact is if Marissa's gone, maybe everything falls apart, maybe he falls apart, maybe he wasn't in the best situation, but the moment like maybe when he met up with Marissa, he was kind of in a slump and Marissa helped bring him up. It doesn't ever seem like there was ever anything between them. It's always like, even season 1 kind of tackled that. It's like, nah, they've always been platonic. It's like, it'd be weird if they dated or something like that. But I think it's just because like she's his rock, and the fact is that he might be losing her. It just kind of, you know, I don't know. I just feel like there aren't many people that Bull really relies on. So I don't know. It's just an interesting development. I couldn't kept notice it because I was wondering myself, I was like, okay, is something up with Marissa? Is she sick or something? Is she overcompensating? Is this about the moment she started laughing? I was like, oh, it really is? I mean, like, I thought like the whole like, oh, like having a night, I was like, okay, it was like a one night stand, or were you just like, I was like, were you making excuses there? I was like, no, that was connected to the whole thing. That it really solidified in my head the moment she was like having that phone call and she was laughing and stuff like that. I was like, you know, that it's new love, you know, love, and she's happy and stuff like that. So maybe you could make the argument maybe Bull isn't necessarily happy, and it's not that he's unhappy because she's happy. It's more like I said, it's hard when everyone's world kind of exists outside your own. When like Bull, all he has is himself and his brain, like what is always being inside of his head, always looking at people. Because it's actually something like I will always remember, because it was in the previews for the first season, was like, it was a line from a lady of like, how does it feel to always be the way you are, Bull, always in people's heads, essentially, and it's like a lonely place. So for Bull, so maybe every once in a while he kind of gets a little bit of escapism when other people are there, and maybe, I don't know, like I said, I'm rambling on, but that's just my own thought process about it. Maybe we'll get more about it, maybe we won't, maybe, I don't know. I just feel like they're setting up some interesting things to see like where they go, you know, going forward for the rest of the season, as well as just, you know, to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.